This isn't kitchen stress. This is someone crossing an unspoken survival rule while you're drowning. I'd have done the same. You crossed a line. This is why kitchens are toxic. FOH deserved it. I was mid-flip when someone said my name. Not yelled. Not urgent. Just casual. In the middle of a brunch rush. The printer was screaming behind me. Tickets stacked so high the rail was bowing. 2 plates were dying in the window. Eggs graying over. Toast already sweating. And my hands were shaking so bad I could feel it in my wrists. Hey, he said. Quick question about my order. My stomach dropped. Because there is no such thing as a quick question when you're 10 tickets deep. I didn't turn around. I kept cooking. Kept moving. Maybe he'd get the message. He didn't. I wrote it all out so it's easier for you, he said, and slid a ticket toward me. Easier. I finally looked. He wasn't holding plates. He wasn't running food. He was just standing there, blocking the pass, smiling like this was a favor. And it's tofu scramble instead of eggs, he kept going, and no oil. And gluten really hurts my stomach, so I'll need gluten-free bread. But you'll have to clean the flat top before you toast it. Because cross-contamination? My ears started ringing. Cross-contamination. During rush. I glanced at the ticket. It wasn't a ticket. It was a manifesto. Mods stacked on mods, arrows, notes written sideways. One order, his order. Behind him, Expo cleared their throat. Loud, sharp. The universal move or your dead signal. I didn't take the ticket. I said, "Are you fucking serious right now?" He blinked. Like he hadn't considered that as an option. I'm just trying to make sure I don't get sick. I felt my pulse in my jaw. You're not getting this right now, I said. We're in the weeds. Run the food in the window. The plates are dying. He didn't move. Instead, he said it, soft, almost wounded. Well, I'm hungry, and my stomach hurts. Something inside me snapped. Not slowly, all at once. Oh, I said, my voice doing that thing where it goes calm but mean. Your stomach hurts? I heard myself say it. I knew I shouldn't, but my hand was already moving. I reached out, took his ticket, and threw it straight into the trash. For half a second, the kitchen went silent. Then he made a sound I wasn't expecting. He started sobbing. Loud, uncontrolled, like I just destroyed him. Faux froze. Expo stopped calling times, and that's when I realized this wasn't just a rush anymore. This was about to turn into something I couldn't take back. The crying didn't stop. It got louder. Not sniffles. Not quiet tears. Full body sobs. Shaking shoulders. The kind of crying that pulls attention whether you want it or not. I didn't look at him. I went back to the flat top like nothing happened. Eggs hit the pan. Butter smoked. My hands moved on muscle memory alone. If I looked up, I knew I'd lose it. Someone at Expo whispered my name. Not a call. A warning. Just give him a minute, they said, like I was the one who needed space. Behind me, the trash can lid creaked. I felt it before I saw it. The ticket. He had pulled it back out. Wrinkled, smudged, still legible. He stood there holding it with both hands like evidence. Like if he showed everyone, they'd understand. I really need this made right, he said between breaths. I can't eat gluten. It makes me sick. Sick. I stared at the grill. At the mess of orders stacked behind his precious one. At the plates still dying because nobody was running them. You fucked up 3 tickets already today, I said without turning around. It just slipped out. He went quiet for a second. Then smaller this time? I'm just trying to do my job. That's when I finally turned. His eyes were red. Face blotchy. Tears streaked down into his beard. FOH stood frozen behind him, pretending not to watch while watching anyway. I work mornings alone, I said. My voice was shaking now. I handle this whole line by myself. Today you're help, and you're making it worse. I shouldn't have said that. I knew it the second it left my mouth. Because now it wasn't about food. It was about competence. About blame. About who was drowning and who was standing there asking for a towel. He swallowed hard. Looked down at the ticket. Then back up at me. So you're just not gonna make it? He asked. Not angry. Not sarcastic. Genuinely confused. Like the idea that his order could wait had never crossed his mind. Behind him, a server grabbed plates and ran them without being asked. Too late. Damage control. I opened my mouth to answer. And that's when the manager's voice cut in from behind us. Why is FOH crying on the line? Every head turned. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This story was no longer mine to control. The manager didn't yell. That was the worst part. She just stood there at the edge of the line, arms crossed, eyes moving from him to me to the trash can like she was assembling a puzzle in real time. Why? She said slowly. Is FOH crying on the line? No one answered. The flat top kept hissing. The printer kept screaming. But the energy shifted, heavy, watchful. He wiped his face with the back of his hand and held up the ticket again. Like a shield. I have an allergy, he said. His voice cracked. I was just asking for my food to be made safe. Safe. The word landed wrong. Because now it wasn't about mods or timing. It was about liability. About rules. about whose story sounded cleaner. I didn't refuse it, I said too fast. I said wait until rush is over. The manager looked at the trash. Then why was his ticket thrown away? I felt heat crawl up my neck. I could feel Foch behind him leaning in. Bones in pockets, eyes wide. This was better than service. He interrupted the line during rush, I said. We're 10 tickets deep. Plates were dying. He wasn't running food. The manager nodded, slow, neutral, dangerous. And you mocked him? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because yeah, I did. Before I could say anything, he spoke again. I told them my stomach hurt, he said. And they made fun of me. The word they stung. It sounded bigger than just me. The manager exhaled through her nose. Okay, she said. I need both of you to step off the line. Now. Off the line. During rush. My heart started racing again. If I step off, everything backs up, I said. She didn't look at me. I didn't ask. Someone slid into my spot. Sloppy. Slow. The egg started sticking immediately. I watched it happen and felt something ugly twist in my chest. He started walking toward the office. Then he turned back. Still crying. Still shaking. I wasn't trying to be difficult, he said. I just didn't want to get sick. That's when it hit me. Everyone else heard a scared employee with an allergy. What they didn't hear was the part where he chose the worst possible moment to matter. And as I followed the manager off the line, I realized something else. I wasn't walking into a conversation. I was walking into a version of this story where I was already the villain. The office door shut behind us. It wasn't loud. It didn't slam. It clicked. And somehow that felt worse. The hum of the fridge filled the silence. The kind of sound you only notice when everything else is gone. He stood near the wall, arms wrapped around himself, eyes red, still sniffling like he'd just run out of air. The manager leaned against the desk and looked at me. Not angry. Not disappointed. Assessing. Walk me through what happened, she said. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because there were two versions of the truth, and I could already feel which one sounded better. He threw my ticket away, he said before I could speak. I told them I had an allergy and they mocked me. Mocked. That word again. The manager's eyes flicked to me. I could have said it wasn't like that. I could have explained the rush. The tickets. The plates dying. The way he'd blocked the pass. But none of that fit into one clean sentence. So I said, he came up during rush with a special order. She nodded. And? And I told him to wait. She waited. I didn't mention the voice I used. I didn't repeat the words "stummy hurts." I didn't say how good it felt for half a second to throw that ticket away. He sniffed, loud. I just needed it done safely, he said. I wasn't trying to cause a problem. The manager rubbed her forehead. This is a workplace, she said. Not a battlefield. Battlefield. I bit my tongue. Because that's exactly what it felt like out there. She looked at me again. Longer this time. Do you understand how this looks? I did. That was the problem. Because from the outside, it didn't look like pressure or survival or someone drowning. It looked like someone in power losing control. She straightened up. I need you to cool off, she said. 5 minutes. Then we'll figure out next steps. Next steps. As if there were any that didn't end badly. She opened the door. The noise from the kitchen rushed back in all at once. Before I stepped out, I glanced at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And that's when it hit me. I'd said a lot on the line. But the thing that was going to cost me the most was what I didn't say in that room. The kitchen didn't sound the same when I walked back in. It was louder. Sharper. Like it knew something had changed. The ticket rail was still full. But now people were moving differently. Faster. Quieter. Nobody looked at me directly. Which somehow felt worse than if they had. He was gone from the pass. FOH had pulled him back behind the bar. I could still see him from the corner of my eye. Hunched over, face in his hands. Shoulders jerking every time he breathed in. Everyone could see it. Guests too. A woman at table 12 leaned toward her friend and whispered something. Both of them looked straight at the line. My stomach turned. I went back to cooking. Or tried to. My hands didn't feel like mine anymore. I overcooked eggs. Burned toast. Had to refire a plate because I forgot the side entirely. Nobody said anything. That was the scariest part. I could feel the story spreading without words. The looks. The pauses. The way servers avoided my side of the line. I heard someone murmur, "That's him," under their breath. Him. Not they. Not the cook. Just him. The manager walked past me and didn't say a word. Didn't check tickets. Didn't ask times. Just kept moving. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath in without forcing it. I caught my reflection in the stainless steel for half a second. Flushed face, wild eyes. jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I didn't look like the person I thought I was. Behind the bar, he stood up, wiped his face, took a deep breath like he was about to do something brave. And that's when I realized he wasn't done telling his version of what happened. He was just getting started. The rush didn't slow down. It just thinned. Like the worst of it had passed, but the damage was already done. I kept cooking anyway, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant replaying everything on a loop. I flipped an order and saw his handwriting in my head. The arrows. The substitutions. The way he'd written GF in all caps twice. This wasn't the first time he'd done this. He did it every shift. Not the crying, the interrupting, walking onto the line like the rules didn't apply to him, asking for changes mid-fire, forgetting mods, ringing things in wrong and then panicking when they came out wrong. Earlier that morning, he'd sent back 2 plates because he forgot to ring no cheese. An hour after that, he rang a ticket twice and blamed the POS. Each time I fixed it. Each time I swallowed it. Because I work mornings alone. Because that's the job. Because if I don't fix it, service dies. Today was supposed to be easier. I had help. Instead, I was slower. More boxed in. Less control. And when he walked up with that ticket, something ugly clicked into place. It wasn't just this order. It was every correction. Every refire, every time I cleaned up his mess while he stood there watching. I realized too late what I'd done. I'd punished him for a pattern. In front of everyone. I looked up and caught the manager watching me from across the kitchen. Not angry. Measuring. Like she was seeing the whole day line up in her head. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about whether I was right. It was about whether this looked like a one-time snap. Or a behavior problem. And if she decided it was the second one. I already knew how this story usually ends. Something changed after that. Not officially. No announcement. No sit-down. Just a shift. Tickets started getting routed around me. Another cook called times for my plates like I wasn't standing there. Expo stopped making eye contact. Little things. Quiet things. The kind of things that mean decisions are being made without you. I heard the manager say my name near the, office. Low. Controlled. The way you say something when you don't want it repeated. I kept my head down and cooked. But my body wasn't in it anymore. My hands moved, but my chest felt hollow. Like the adrenaline had drained out and left nothing behind. Behind the bar, he was back on the floor. Not crying now. Smiling. Small. Careful. Talking to a server with his hands, moving just enough to show he was still shaken. Still believable. I wondered what he was saying. I wondered who he was saying it to. Every time I looked up, someone was already looking away. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How close the cameras were to the line. How the manager avoided my station. How nobody asked me for help anymore. I caught a fragment of conversation as someone passed behind me. Can't talk to people like that. I felt my stomach drop. Not because it was untrue. Because it was enough. The rush finally broke. The printer slowed. The rail thinned. Normally, that's when you breathe. I couldn't. Because when the noise died down, something else took its place. Expectation. And as I wiped down my station, I realized the next escalation wasn't going to happen on the line. It was going to happen somewhere quiet. Somewhere with a door. And I already knew who they were going to call in first. The kitchen emptied out in pieces. Servers clocked out. Dishes clattered into racks. The noise faded until all that was left was the low hum of the hoods and the smell of burnt oil that never really goes away. I wiped down my station slower than I needed to. Buying time? The manager stood near the office, talking to someone from FOH. I couldn't hear the words. Just the tone, calm, controlled, final. He walked past me on his way out. Didn't look at me. Didn't say anything. That hurt more than if he had. Because silence leaves room for whatever version people want to believe. The manager finally turned toward me. "Can you step into the office for a minute?" she asked. There it was. The door again. I followed her in. The chair scraped against the floor as I sat down. My leg bounced without me telling it to. She didn't sit. She leaned against the desk and folded her arms. "I need to ask you something," she said. I nodded. She held my eyes. "If this happened again," she said, "would you handle it differently?" The question landed heavy. Because she wasn't asking about him. She was asking about me. I could feel every possible answer line up in my head. Yes, and admit I was wrong. No, and prove her right. Maybe, and sound dishonest. Seconds passed. The silence stretched. And that's when I realized something awful. Whatever I said next wasn't going to change what already happened. It was only going to decide what kind of person they thought I was. I opened my mouth. And for the first time all day, I didn't know what to say. I walked back into the kitchen and it felt different, quieter, taut, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move. He was back behind the bar, smiling now, polished, calm. The crying from earlier erased like it never happened. Like the story had already rewritten itself. Servers whispered. Plates moved slower. Eyes flicked to me and quickly away. Every glance felt like a judgment. I grabbed a plate, flipped it over, and felt the weight of every pair of eyes. Then I heard it. One of the servers, low enough for me to catch, said, "Did you see what he told the manager? About your reaction?" My stomach sank. I froze mid-hand. I didn't need details. I could imagine. The thing I'd thought was contained on the line wasn't. It was spreading. And I realized that it didn't matter that I was right about the rush. Or the tickets. Or the way he'd fucked up every single order before this one. Because now the story had two sides. Mine, the version with context, pressure, and survival. Hers, or rather his, the one where I humiliated him in front of the kitchen. And as I looked at him talking casually to the other FOH, smiling like he'd won something, I felt it. I wasn't just a cook anymore. I was a character in his story, and I had no control over the ending. That's when the first text came through. From the manager. "We need to talk, now." And just like that, the rush wasn't over. This was only getting started. The office door clicked behind me again. He wasn't there. The manager wasn't in a rush either. Just leaning against the desk like she always did. When she was about to deliver bad news. "I've heard both sides," she said slowly, almost casually. "And I want your version." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I didn't know how to explain a line full of chaos. 10 tickets deep, a FOH crying like a child, without sounding like the villain. "You made a choice," she continued, eyes locked on mine. "And people saw it. That's how it's going to be remembered." My chest tightened. Not because I regretted it, but because I realized she wasn't asking for clarity. She was making a decision, already. I swallowed. Tried to argue, tried to explain. The words stuck. And then she said something worse. Also, HR got a call. My stomach dropped. Not from fear of being in trouble. Not exactly, but from knowing the version of the story that was being told. The sobbing, the mocking words. The ticket thrown in the trash. Everything I thought I controlled. Gone. I looked at her. What did they say?" She shrugged.